Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Therapy, Etc. I have a very special guest today, Miss Stephanie. Do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you and who you are?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a fan of the podcast. I really love it. So my name is Stephanie Sorady. I am a social worker, therapist working towards licensure. I graduated from Columbia School of Social Work May 2020, so in the midst of the pandemic, which was crazy. I'm also a writer, and I have a mental health poetry collection coming out next week.
Oh my goodness, I want to know all about that. Now
Yeah.
I'm like, you ended with that. I'm like, okay, I want to start with that.
That's the hook. That's the hook.
Yeah, tell me about the writing.
Of course. So I was just reflecting on this yesterday, actually. I started writing, and it's a little bit in the intro to the book as well. I started writing poetry specifically when I was 9, which sounds like such a weird thing for a 9-year-old to do. But we were given an assignment in the 3rd grade to write a poem about something we loved. Like, we were learning about what poetry was and everything. And I wrote a poem called My Acapulco Home, which is where my abue, my grandma, lives. And I wrote a poem about it, and I really enjoyed the process. Poetry is such a beautiful way to explore your feelings. Obviously, I didn't know that's what I was doing at 9, but I got to feel, like missing her and nostalgia and kind of explore growing up in 2 different cultures, all in this little homework assignment. And I showed it to my mom, and she loved it. And that little bit of encouragement sometimes is all that kids especially need, or even adults.
Yeah.
And so I kept using poetry kind of as like a therapeutic tool to deal with a lot of things throughout my life before I had access to any mental health information, before I had access to therapy or anything like that. That was my therapy, was reading and writing. So this book, the process was really fun. I did it through Alegria Publishing, which is an indie publisher that focuses on Latinx writers. And it was really nice because I felt very supported. It's kind of scary to write your first book. And
I bet.
Yeah. But they're really great support. So I definitely recommend folks check them out. And the idea of the book, I hope it comes across that way, is it kind of starts out with my mental health struggles, and it develops with me on my journey so far. So the beginning is the hard stuff, and then you even progress with me through my first therapy session, and then becoming a therapist myself. Some of those experiences are in there as well. And then there's a ton of themes of other subjects that are really important to me, like feminism and self-love and my cultures and things like that. So I really hope that it can be a companion to people.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I loved so much about reading, and what I loved about therapy when I started going, was not feeling so alone, not feeling that what you are going through makes you wrong or bad, having someone else there to tell you, oh yeah, I felt that way too. So that's the objective of the book.
I love it. And it's called Kiss from God, right?
Kiss from God, yeah. And the story is explained. There's 2 poems named, there's Kiss from God Part 1 and Part 2. But at the beginning, I believe I do explain, I don't know how well you could see it. I have a really unique birthmark.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
For folks that are just listening, it's like on my left arm, and it's purple splotches.
Yeah, get on YouTube so you can see it.
Yes. It's actually pretty light now. When I was born, it was very dark purple, and my skin was twisted here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's just a birthmark. There was nothing wrong. But my parents were really concerned that because my dad says people would rudely ask questions to me, like, what's wrong with you? What happened to you? Why does your arm
Mm-hmm.
look like that? And they were really concerned that I was going to kind of like be self-conscious about it. But they were very surprised that the first explanation I gave to someone who just a stranger that just came up and said, "What happened to you?" and pointed at my arm. I said, "Oh, it's a kiss from God." And I
I
must have been
love
like 3 or something.
that.
They didn't tell me to say that. It was just a little kid knowing
Uh-huh.
that the thing that makes them unique is actually really beautiful and special.
Yeah.
And so that's the essence I really wanted in the book, was all the things that we think are so strange and icky about us sometimes are actually the most beautiful and unique things about us as well.
Oh, I love that message. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, like, what inspired you to like put all of this in a book? Because, like you said, like this is like your journey and kind of like the progression. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how did you, what made you want to say, okay, I want to share this with others?
I think that's a really good question, because I always recommend that folks find some sort of creative outlet. I think we are all creative, even if we don't think we are, whether it's painting or drawing or making like TikToks. Honestly, that's like, it's a very creative endeavor.
I cannot
Writing,
do these TikToks. Oh my
they're
gosh.
really hard. My husband does them. He has a whole TikTok channel on ancient Rome, funny enough. And I thought
Oh
it
my
was so
gosh.
silly at first.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, "Oh, let me show you how to make them so you can make some mental health ones." And they tire me out.
Okay, you need to teach me.
Okay,
We'll have a
I
little
will.
tutorial.
Okay. They're not easy. So they are a creative endeavor. And I really do think everyone is creative. And it's so beneficial to self-discovery and to healing to have some sort of creative time for yourself. So in part, this was very healing for me to go through. But the sharing part of creativity, I do think you should wait until you feel comfortable sharing it. Everything that I share, I don't share everything about myself through these poems, but everything that I do share, I've made enough peace with, I've made enough progress with, that I'm comfortable with everyone I know looking at it if they wanted to. And that in itself feels so good to be able to say that. And then the reason I wanted to publish it versus just making it and keeping it for myself was I kept coming back to, it's always 16-year-old me who was struggling so much. What 16-year-old isn't struggling, right, with something?
Yep.
I had a lot going on at that age specifically. My siblings are a lot younger than I am. My brother is 12 years younger. My sister is 15 years younger.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah. So there were babies in the home,
And
and
you were already like a preteen.
yeah.
My
And
goodness,
just
how was
dealing
that
with
for
your
you?
own. Oh my gosh. They're almost like my kids. And they're the things I love the most in this world are my brother and my sister, but it's hard when you're a teenager and you do need to help your parents with a crying baby in the middle of the night. You do need to help with things that other 16-year-olds weren't doing when I was that age. So I had a lot, and then you have your own figuring yourself out. I started to experience pretty severe depression at that age and was very alone in that and felt like I could not talk to anyone about it. So I got really, really good at masking it, at hiding it and pushing through it on my own. And so when writing this book, my big hope was that even if someone out there isn't 16 but feels that way and they read it, that they can relate and not feel so alone during the messy process of figuring yourself out and trying to heal from so many things.
Wow. So when does it come out?
It's available for pre-order now, and it should be out next week after the long weekend. So it's the 2nd that we're recording this. It should be out by, let me look at a calendar because I don't know dates. It should be out by Tuesday the 7th
Oh my goodness,
September.
Stephanie, I'm so excited for you. I
Oh,
need to
thank
check
you.
it out.
Thank you
That's
so much.
awesome.
I'm really excited too. It took about 7 months to write, I think, maybe longer. I'm still in like COVID time, so my brain doesn't understand.
Yeah, time is like a social construct. What is
It
time?
truly is. It's not real. Definitely not anymore. But I think it took about 7 months to like finish a first draft, and then I had to work with an editor. I apparently do not understand what commas are for. Why
How come?
Every single edit I got from this beautiful, lovely editor who's also a poet and a writer, she was always correcting where I'd put commas or adding commas where I was like, I didn't know one needed to be there, or taking them away. And one of my resolutions is to learn the appropriate use of a comma.
I'm wondering like how much of my writing should not have a comma, because I love them.
I do too. That was it.
They create the space.
Yes. And I was like, I remember one time I was like, aren't you supposed to, I was telling my husband this, I was like, don't you put a comma in every time you pause, like if you were speaking? And he's like, I've never heard that before. I don't know who told me that.
I feel like that's kind of how I use commas. It's a way to create space to pause.
Yeah. I'm like, if I were saying this out loud, I would have paused here.
Yeah, and there's my comma.
Where the comma goes.
I agree with you. Somebody taught us right. I don't know about everybody else.
Yes, I agree. There's some other false way to use them, but that was an unexpected know yourself better moment of writing a poetry collection. And spelling in general is not my strong suit. So for anyone who's not a good speller, you're not alone in that either.
So I will link your book somewhere in the description so that others can check it out. Because that sounds like such a great a journey throughout this time, but also just reflection from your past experiences and then where you are now. So I'm very excited for you. Congrats.
Thank you so much. And hopefully they're not all about me specifically. Hopefully there's some universal ones in there. And it starts off a little sad, everyone, but that's okay, because I promise it gets very, very much so uplifting, and there should be some really good ones to help inspire and motivate you as well.
So you started writing this book during 2020.
Did I? I guess so.
11 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
And you also graduated in 2020.
And I graduated, yes.
Okay, so tell me, you were in graduate school. But your program was here, right, in LA. You were doing like an online program, or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did. So it was ahead of the curve for the pandemic. I did my whole Columbia graduate school classes online. So I'm sure every school offers this now, but essentially you log into live classes and it's like a big Zoom meeting, but I'd say a little less chaotic. It's very structured, and you get called on like in a normal lecture.
Almost like if your computer was on a desk.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way of thinking about it. So the professor's up there lecturing, and there's slides, and it really depends obviously on the person's teaching style. But sometimes I had several professors who, I think particularly because we were online, didn't want folks to disengage and would randomly call on you to ask you something about the readings. I felt like it was actually really rigorous, again, because I think people really wanted to make sure that the students were engaged and learning. So typically the way it went was lecture with random fun questions to terrify you if you didn't do the readings. And then they would have breakout room discussions. So that was a really nice way to get to know some of my classmates. I made friends from North Carolina, from Arizona, from the East Coast that were all doing the program online as well. And it was full time. And then we had one advising class like an advisory class, which was in person. So I got to meet other Columbia students in my class that were also living in LA.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, that was nice. So we met monthly, and it was actually really nice. It was kind of for just discussing how the program's going so far, connecting. It was led by an LCSW, a local LCSW, that could kind of help guide us in terms of career goals and making sure that we're taking the right classes and stuff like that. And then we got to socialize. And then the other component was field experience, which obviously is 100% in person, and you do it locally. So I did first year at Santa Monica College in the crisis prevention team, as well as the wellness center doing therapy. And then the second year at the Veterans Hospital here. And then when I graduated, they offered me a fellowship there as well.
Nice. And that's the work that you're doing now, right?
Yes, I do work with veterans now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I do case management and therapy services with them.
Wow. Did I tell you that I briefly worked at Santa Monica City College in their counseling center?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So I was working at a nonprofit called D.D. Hirsch, and they moved me around wherever they wanted me, wherever they needed me. And at one point, they placed me at Santa Monica City College, and I would be there maybe like twice a week in the counseling center.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
Services. Yeah.
I wonder if they don't do that anymore, because we referred students to D.D. Hirsch all the time. That was probably like the go-to mental health referral, but there was no one there in person.
Yeah. I used to be there like twice a week, and this was back in like maybe like 2013 or something like that. So a long time ago.
A long time ago. Oh my God, that doesn't feel like a long time ago.
Oh, well, it does to me, because I'm like, wow, that's so far away from like the work that I've done like from there till now.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy. I think whenever anyone is feeling like down on themselves, like think of where you were just 5 years ago, and you'll probably be like, wow, have I changed and grown, and all the lessons I've learned.
That's true.
It changes so much.
Yeah, I've done so much since then.
I actually attended Santa Monica College when I graduated high school. So it was very surreal going back as a graduate student to assist the students there. And it definitely made me feel really proud of myself, because going to a community college, I don't know about students now at that age, but I felt like there was some sort of stigma around it almost. Around like not going directly to a 4-year school.
Oh, got you.
And I kind of felt like a little bit of like anxiety around that when I started, but I just was so determined to like prove this imaginary person that was judging me wrong, that I ended up doing really well and was able to transfer to USC. And it ended up being a really good experience for me. And it's great for reducing your student loans. Again, if there's any students listening, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Santa Monica City College has really good transfer rates, no? I think
they have like the best in the state. But yeah, I just felt like when I was there, at least, so when I was there as a student, when I was there as an employee, it was really helping folks in crisis. So I didn't help with any academic advising. But I remember showing up and telling my academic advisor the first day we met, I want to go to USC. And she was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, this is everything you need to do. You need to get at least these grades consistently. This is what they're looking for. Consider these extracurriculars or whatever. She literally laid out a plan, and I just followed it to the T. Yeah.
That's nice and very easy. At least you know exactly what you need to do. There's no questions, because that's something that I feel like I hear, like, I don't know what classes to take, I'm just kind of taking any random class. So that's kind of nice that you kind of advocated for yourself and made sure that you knew what you needed to do.
Yes, I was really motivated, and I became like the little academic counselor for my friends that were there too. I was like, no, you got to take this class, this class, this class.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you graduated last year
Uh-huh.
and you graduated during pandemic with your
Yes.
grad program. How was that for you? Such a
I,
huge thing.
I know. I don't think I'm over it. I know so many folks have lost so much during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
but again, in high school, I was depressed. I was secretly depressed, I guess. I was also the bad kid in high school.
Really? I don't
Yes,
know.
no
I
one
don't know if I
ever
believe
believes
you.
that. No one ever believes that anymore. But I was the kid, because that's what happens when you are a teenager and you're dealing with stuff and you can't talk to anyone about it. You act out. So I would skip class. All the time, all the time. I would skip class. I would talk during class. I was constantly in the dean's office.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it wasn't anything like aggressive. I just was very checked out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
And because of
Over
that,
it.
I was over it from like day 2. I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do this.
This is
So
not for me.
this is not for me. I barely graduated high school. I ended up getting the English award, ironically, because I loved English literature so much, the class, but I had really poor grades. And I always got the speech from counselors and teachers: you are just not applying yourself, you're not trying hard enough, that sort of thing, which at the time didn't motivate me. But then I went to
Yeah.
SMC and felt the consequences of my actions and was very motivated, as I said, to get into USC. So at that point, even when I was starting to do better and I started going to therapy and my grades improved and things like that at community college, I don't think I ever would have pictured myself going to a school like Columbia.
So prestigious.
Yeah, it felt very out of reach. Even when I told my parents that I wanted to go to USC, they were supportive, but they were like, yeah, I don't know how you're going to pay for that. I don't know how you're going to figure that whole situation out. Good luck. They didn't really know anything about the process. So I felt very alone in that as well, let alone going to an Ivy League school. But the reason I applied was because my grandmother on my father's side, she grew up in Brooklyn, New York. She was very different than me in that she loved mathematics and numbers and just those, like, the hard sciences, really. And she actually got into Columbia when she graduated high school and was one of the, I don't know, maybe 4 women admitted into mathematics or something that year. I don't remember specifically, but it was a big deal for her. And when she told her father, he said to her, why would you go to a school like that? We don't have any money and you're going to get married. She was engaged to my grandfather. He said, so you don't need to go to school. That's why women go to school, is to find a husband. You already found a husband.
Wow. It's like,
So
you don't need to do that anymore. You already got what you wanted.
Yeah, you
or
don't
what
need
you
to.
needed or whatever.
Yeah, you don't have to go through this whole school thing. And she didn't go. And she got married and immediately had children. And she passed away when I was about 18 years old. But prior to her passing away, she and I had a heart-to-heart, and none of her children ever knew that she'd gotten into Columbia.
Wow.
She kept that to herself, and she told me the story, and she told me that was the only regret she had in her life was not going and getting an education at a school like that. So then the only reason I even applied to the graduate program was to honor her. I was like, I'm not going to get in, but for her, I'm going to try.
Yeah. Oh,
so
my
this
goodness.
leads back, this is a very long way of getting back to your question, which was not being able to walk at graduation was so hard for me. It was so hard.
I can just imagine.
Yeah, it feels like, and for so many people that didn't have graduations that year. It's the fruits of your labor, right? It's the moment where your family gets to see you in the cap and gown and all of that.
Yeah, and just like, not only graduate school, but even, just from an undergraduate, from high school,
High school.
even like middle school, because it's like a culmination.
Yes.
It's like a coming of age moment.
Yes.
And so as you get older, like these special moments kind of like they're like the stepping stones as you continue progressing, and then now you are in graduate school. So it's like either you walk now or you go for a PhD. What are you going to do?
Yes. And I'm not going for the PhD.
I know.
I don't think I can do it. I'm sure eventually I'll probably get over the school hangover that I have and maybe think about it. But right now that's not an option.
Yeah.
So it felt really sad, and something that COVID really made me reflect on was how much we rely on like rituals or rites of passage to really mark things. Because even though school had ended, right, and my friends did like the drive-by graduations and things like that, when I started my fellowship very shortly after. And so it and in a fellowship, you are in a learning position as well.
Okay.
Right. The expectation is that you're still training and kind of honing your skills. You get lighter caseloads, so you can attend more workshops and conferences and things like that. So it still felt like I was a student, and it was so hard to really own who I was as a clinician and a social worker. And I didn't even recognize it until my supervisor pointed out. He's like, you have to be confident that you're the expert in the room when you're the only mental health professional there.
I see what you're saying. So it was kind of because you didn't have like that rite of passage, that ritual almost, that it kind of felt like you were still a student when you were already in the fellowship.
Yeah. I think that's part of it, at least, is these nice little like markers where you're like, okay, now I am a full-grown social worker.
Yeah, no, you know what? And that makes perfect sense. I mean, when I am with clients, I tell them, especially for those that are not, they don't like working from home, but they have to, or they're struggling with it. They'll find themselves working like on their bed, and then like just kind of closing the laptop and going to sleep. And there's no, like, I call them like anchors, like stops, moments. And so I really encourage, like, okay, if you are working, like I tell them, like, this is where I work, where I'm sitting here. If I'm not sitting here, I'm not working. If I'm sitting here, I'm working. And so encouraging, like creating like a little space, even if it's like on the coffee table, like if you're sitting in that specific place with your computer, that means you're working. But then when you close it, what are you going to do after? Like, what is going to be like that stopping point so that you can now continue on to the next thing? And like what you're sharing kind of reminds me of that, like kind of like creating that stopping point, that anchor, like done with this and I can move on.
Yes.
I can see how that can be confusing.
These little, even if they're little, like you said, like, oh, I'm closing the laptop and I'm going to the other room. Really small rituals to begin and end things are so, I don't know if it's like, they're just so tangible for our brains, that our brain, like you said, it's anchored. It's like, okay, the end is here. I see my therapist virtually, and she's so cute. She mentioned to me, because I'm going to be working from home as well virtually, she said, you know what you need to do? She's very spiritual. She's like, you need to like smudge the room, like in between our sessions and when you talk to clients and things like that, so that you mark like my healing is put to the side for now. It's in a container. And now I'm working versus I'm still in therapy mode for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I could get confusing. Actually, when I see my therapist, I just go to another room.
That's probably
I'm like, I'm not sitting here because this is work.
Yeah, and our brains do get confused. It's so crazy. We forget how old our brains are. Like evolutionary, they haven't changed in a very long time. So they still very much so function as an animal brain. And these little anchors kind of help ease their anxieties, right? Like, okay, now I know that this has ended and this has started.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. I work every day.
Mhm.
And I have like a light. You can probably, see like a reflection or whatnot. But every day, even though I know that the next day I'm gonna work again and I'm gonna need that light, I put everything away.
Really?
Yeah, it's like
That's good.
a way for me to be like, this is part of me ending the day. Like I turn off the laptop, I disconnect the light, I put it to the side, I clear out my desk, and
It's
then
your
it's
cleansing.
and like that's what I do it every day. Even if I were to work late, let's just say I'm working till like 8, 9 o'clock at night and I'm working again like at 10 in the morning. I will
Mhm.
still do that, knowing that the next day I'll have to do it. But it's just part of my process to just kind of like know that the day has ended
That's
and
really
I can
good.
move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to look for more areas in my apartment to do that. I like that because it's also just good habit to keep it tidy,
Mm-hmm,
and you feel
mm-hmm,
more relaxed and inspired, I'd imagine, than when it's all like jumbled and out there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So going back to your graduation and how
Oh,
like
yes.
that didn't happen in 2020, did you have the opportunity to walk in 2021?
No, they didn't
Oh,
give us that opportunity. I do
oh,
have a trip to New York planned this October.
okay.
Because I've been to New York a few times. My dad's from there.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and I got to go for orientation for grad school. We did that in person, and that was really nice. But my husband and I have actually never been together. He went once as a child and hasn't been back. And so this is like my graduation trip is going to New York. And we're going to go to the campus and take pictures and things like that to kind of give a nice little
commemorate.
treat. Yes.
Uh-huh.
To kind
Oh,
of
that's
mark the
gonna
time
be
before
nice.
it's too far away, you know?
Uh-huh. And October is a perfect time. Fall is just so beautiful in New York. Don't go right now. I'm sure you've seen the photos of what's happening with like the with Hurricane Ida. The
Yes.
flooding. Oh my goodness, that's crazy how that is happening. I can't believe
I
it.
know. No, not a good time now. I've been in New York during hurricanes before, and it's definitely not as cute during as the fall.
Yeah, yeah, fall is the best because even in the springtime, oh my goodness, it gets too hot or
It's
starts getting
sticky.
hot, sticky, spring into summer. Ooh,
Yeah.
so much. Well, that's going to be super exciting, and that's going to be really cool that both of you get to go together.
Yes, thank you. You went
Be a
to
lot of
school in New
fun.
York as well, or you lived in New York after you finished?
I lived in New York after I finished, so I
Okay.
graduated from Loyola Marymount in 2012, I believe,
Hmm.
and I worked in LA for a while, and then I moved to New York in 2016.
I love
So
that.
yeah, and I lived really close to Columbia, like right above it.
Really?
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Oh, nice.
I think the stop at Columbia was like 119th or something like that. I forgot right now, or 113th, something like that. But yeah, like Columbia and the was kind of like the area, like kind of hang out in that area. There's a lot of like little things to do.
Yes.
And then going into Central Park, just a little bit, a couple stops down.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But
very
yeah,
historical, very pretty over there.
yes.
Did you
So
move for just like a change of pace from LA?
yeah, I didn't really have like anything like truly holding me back here in LA, and I wanted something different. So I actually got a job out there working for managed care, which is like the corporate side of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different. I was managing a team of case managers, and it was a very different environment from nonprofit and
Right.
from like community, or I'm sorry, from private practice.
Yeah.
It was very much working with a lot of reports and Excel
Mm,
documents and reporting stuff to like the health plan that we were managing on the behavioral health side. So basically, what it was is like when you call your insurance because you're looking for a therapist,
right.
you would call our team, and then one of our case
Oh.
managers would help direct you to the therapist. And also, if you were hospitalized a bunch of times, and we would check in with
Mm-hmm.
you like on a weekly basis to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're okay, maybe set up some goals together, kind of stuff like that. But it was all on the
Oh.
phone. It was all like it was
Wow.
a telephonic case managers. That's what the positions were. And I would manage a team of, it was case managers, it was
Mm-hmm.
peer specialists. So people within the community that would go and meet some of our clients or patients in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And a few other like administrative roles
Okay.
that was like kind of under our team.
Did
So
you work from home or in the office?
a little bit of both.
Nice.
Excuse me. Primarily from home though. I think I worked from home maybe like 3 to 4 days. I'd go in like once a week. So for me, working from home was like
I was
really
gonna
nice.
say, yeah.
Yeah. It was
And you're
very
ahead of
much.
all of us.
Yeah, well, and so that's when I decided to start working online, providing therapy, because my job was very much like I wasn't having any client interaction, no therapy. I was managing a team, and I wasn't talking to any patients really or any
Mm-hmm.
clients. And so that's when I started doing online therapy because I really wanted to still do like the client interaction.
That's awesome. And it's so nice. Like I said, I work with veterans, and a lot of the folks that I work with are older adults.
Mhm.
And I think you'd assume that people in general, particularly older adults, don't like virtual services, but a lot of people really, it's so accessible. A lot of people really enjoy being able to, particularly like with mental health, right? Like we're talking about hard things a lot of the time, to be cozy in your home. If you have privacy in your home, then it's pretty ideal.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephanie, as we begin wrapping up, what are some self-care tips that you like to enjoy when you are, coming out of like work stuff or even like family stuff or friends or life? How do you
Mm-hmm.
take care of you?
So it depends on how severe the frazzled is. I'd say a really fun practice that I actually developed while working on the poetry book on Kiss from God is to experiment with creative things that are outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean it in the simplest way. I went out and I bought a little notepad for painting, and I bought watercolors like for little kids.
Uh-huh.
And because obviously I enjoy writing and stuff, but it was also a project I was trying to bring to fruition. And sometimes you're stuck, and that wasn't self-care as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I would literally sit on the floor in my living room, put on some nice music and paint. And it looks like a toddler did it, but that's not the point. The point is to like relax your brain with something fun, something different, some play. Another one that I would do is, my mom is probably the best cook in the world. And I'm sure a lot of people say that, especially Mexican moms. We all think that. My mom is from Mexico, but she really is. She's honestly the best cook ever.
Uh-huh.
And so I was always really intimidated to get in the kitchen because she's so good.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, for fun, like it doesn't have to be good. You're just experimenting. I'd have her give me some recipes and I'd try to make them, and they definitely did not turn out like hers. But the point
tried and you'll perfect it.
Yes, exactly. The point was to just do something and take the pressure off yourself. Do something fun. Do not expect perfection. Do it with lightness, with compassion. That's a really good, I think, regular practice to do. If you could do it monthly, you could do it weekly. Schedule time for some creative play with something that you're not familiar with. Mm-hmm. And then if you're in a big situation of overwhelm, like you're really stressed, you've got personal things and professional things going on, I definitely am a big believer in going back to basics and just focusing on, am I drinking water? Am I eating a relatively balanced meal? Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be perfect or super healthy, but just relative, like I'm getting good nutrients. Am I moving my body? So whatever that looks like for you, for some of us, it's walking. For some of us, it's stretching. Right. Am I moving my body? Am I sleeping? Those are the big ones. Hydrating, eating, moving, sleeping. And it sounds silly, but those are the first things that go for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially, I think all of them. Yeah. Like if something is going on, I don't want to move.
Yes.
Because
you're frozen.
Yeah. And some people say like, oh, when I work out, I feel less stressed. That doesn't happen for me. So that goes out the window. I'm like, if I'm stressed out, I feel too stressed to work out.
Yes. I
So,
don't I don't enjoy it either. I have plenty of friends who that's where they release their feelings. I don't enjoy like going to a class or weightlifting or something if I'm really stressed, but it's walking for me.
yes, me too. Like something
Yeah.
like that, like just taking a walk. I have a dog, so just walking with
Yes.
her and just being really quiet.
Mhm.
That's something that helps me. So I agree with that.
Mhm. Just your
Okay.
basic needs and whatever it looks like for you. Also getting a dog is really good self-care.
Oh yeah. My little puppy, she's 11. Ah.
Oh my god, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was so funny at work, we just had, like we have self-care presentations because 'cause we're
Mhm.
social workers and, notoriously burnt out and things like that, so we get these, like, little self-care presentations from our peers, and the one this week was, "Get a pet." That was the advice, was to get a pet, whether it was a dog, a cat, a fish, a bird. I have a dog and a bird, and the
Awesome.
research shows they're very good for your physical and your mental health. So if you can, definitely consider it.
Yeah, even if it's a fish, because that's just like in a
Yes.
little bowl.
Yeah, it's just
Good.
chilling there, but there's
Yeah.
something else alive in the room with you, which is
Uh-huh.
comforting.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right, Stephanie. Well, that is all for today. Any last minute things that you want to share with us and our listeners?
If you want to find me, I live most on Instagram. I'm at Stephanie Sorady. That's SORADY_MSW. And in my bio, there's a link to the link to purchase my book as well.
Awesome. And I will link her information as well for the
Thank you.
book and her Instagram, where to find her. But Stephanie, it was such a cool conversation. I'm so glad that you joined me today.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, no, thank you. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. All right, everybody, please rate, subscribe, listen, follow. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out. And until next time, all right, bye.